Please join me in welcoming the 12th Secretary of Veterans Affairs, the Honorable Doug Collins.
Well, good morning, everybody. How we doing? All right, I love it. And I would like to go ahead and get this out of the way now for my Army and Marine friends, for those of us, especially in the Air Force, and I know I heard some of my Navy folks as well. Thank you for making this closer to brunch time on Sunday. We appreciate that. Chief Warrant Officer Johnson, thanks for that kind introduction. It was good to be here. Chief Chaplain, let me offer my deepest condolences also for the loss of the aviators this last month. We had Captain Rebecca Lobach, we had Chief Warrant Officer Andrew Eves, Crew Chief Staff Sergeant Ryan O'Hara. Army aviators who I've been a part of and watching from my side on the Air Force and Navy for a long time are some of our best and our brightest, and it was a dangerous commitment. May God bless them and their families as well. I share a personal story. When I came back in the Air Force in 2002, about a year later was Afghanistan kicked off, and I'm at Moody Air Force Base down in Valdosta, Georgia. And I'm coming in to do my time that week, and I hear on the radio report, that was back, you remember when the war surge kicked off, everybody was discussing, and you always hear on the radio news reports of what was coming in. And I heard a report that a helicopter had went down in Afghanistan. Little did I know, but and for those in this room, you know what I'm talking about. You hear something, and the hair raises on the back of your neck. And I said, this is going to be close to home. And it was the helicopter that went down was Komodo 11, a Pave Hawk from our base in March, 6 deaths. It was my first real introduction to the war at that point, and the memorial service that we had was one of the first ones that was actually filmed. And so thinking about what has happened over the last little bit brings back the sacrifice of those, and also the sacrifice of you in this room, of what we've all done and those who couldn't join us this morning. Commander Dan Stress, good morning, and I want to thank you for the invitation. More importantly, thank you for your courageous Army service and for your leadership of this great organization. As a combat medic, I'm a chaplain. And we look at this, when a service member is hurting and need, one of the first things they call is for their medic, and right after their medic, they call for their chaplain. And we're there all together. And if somebody once told me, so, well, chaplain, how do we want to call you? I said, I don't care how you call me, just call me. I'm a Southern Baptist who has been called Padre more times than I want to admit. But I have actually said, whenever called Padre, I say, yes, what do you need? Okay, we're all good as we come together. Master Adjutant Barry Jansky, good to see you. You once wrote, Barry, that it comes to serving veterans, the greatest thing about DAV is its collective power of the DAV community. I couldn't agree more, but I'm going to add one little bit to it. We're even more powerful when our organizations come together with a powerful VA that says, as I have said over the last few weeks, just over 2 weeks, but in my confirmation hearing, from here on out, I want to announce to you clearly, and hear me clearly, at the VA, we are back to the veteran being first. So we look forward to that, and we're going to continue that, and I promise I will work with you. As in life and family, I told the VA staff when I first got there, I said, I view this as a family. Now, you can think about however kind you want to with your family, but I know in my family, it was one of those things is we can all fight and we can mess with each other, we can cuss with each other, but the minute we walk out that door, nobody else better. And so I want you just to know that as a veteran who's serving here, and one who is still serving, by the way, passed my PT test this week. Thank you very much. I do not want to hear anything from some of my other joint service brethren about that, because I did do my shuttle run and I was almost wore out. I'm kidding. I mean, I thought 5 push-ups was pretty good. I mean, give me a break. As we go forward. Again, I'm also looking forward to joining DAV at the Winter Sports Clinic at the end of March, and looking forward to the 400 vets who experience and be there at the Empower the Miracle on the Mountain. There's no better example of what DAV is about, and empowering disabled vets to lead high-quality lives with respect and dignity. These are just some of the many things that you are famous for. I do have a question here. One of the things is for me is healthcare access. And you may have heard me say this before, and you'll hear me elaborate on it for VA care is VA care under this secretary. VA care is going to be the highest standard, whether you receive it in a VA facility or receive it in community care, because I will be the one holding the bar for wherever it serves. So we're going to continue that process looking forward. But also, you also make access with their rides to appointments. 235,000 rides last year alone. Is Kevin Grantier here? Can you raise your hand? Is Kevin here? There we go, Kevin. Thank you so much. A good friend of mine named Steve Daines, who happens to serve as a senator from your state, made aware of you and what y'all were talking about, and we made sure that Montana's DAV volunteer drivers are back on the road. Look, I don't play around. We get stuff done. Thank you for your input. Also making sure is we're going to continue access to benefits, and last year alone, representing veterans over a little under 1 million claims, more than $30 billion in earned benefits delivered is life-changing. So to all of those and those you represent, I want to thank you for what you do. Now, let me just, before we get started here, I want to just say one is just a privilege to be the 12th Secretary of VA. I walked in that building and I look at it as an honor and something that I appreciate so much. When President Trump asked me to do this job, I looked at him and I said, President Trump, I said, what is your mission? What would you have me to do, sir? And I will tell you this, he looked at me and he said, Doug, and I've known him for a while, and he said, Doug, you just go take care of my veterans. I said, yes, sir. That's a simple message. Now, we can all look at this and we say, what does that mean? Well, in a little bit of time, let's talk about what does that mean? Because President Trump and the Senate, for their confidence, give me a responsibility that I take seriously. I've had the opportunity to grow and watch service in many ways. I've watched it in a Georgia State Trooper, 31 years, my father, who went out no matter the conditions, no matter the time, and would make sure that those were safe. I saw him come back in with his uniform tore with blood on his collar. He'd change shirts and go back out. I watched a mom who worked with senior adults in my community, where they would go during the day and they would get a breakfast, they would get lunch, they would have trips, and this was where I grew up in, because it was something that you give back to everyone else. It's an example for me. If you come into my office, and if I could have every one of you in there, we would just line up and I'd let you come because it's your office. I just get to just stay there for a little bit. But there's two things that I told the Senate, and I'm telling you today that are there. Is my first promise, and my first promise kept, to remind me of who I serve. There's dog tags and a paracord bracelet from a young airman who gave it to me. He said, Chap, you give us stuff, I want to give you something. I wore it while I was in Iraq for the whole time. It sits on my desk, sits right across there from where I put my coins, to remind me of what we are. Because as I said earlier, and I want this to be heard clearly from every organization, but especially with those inside the VA walls and the VA workforce, that we will not settle for anything less. It is not about the VA as an organization. It is about the veteran that we serve. And if we are not serving the veteran, then the VA is not in the position it should be. Now you may say, what's this guy from Georgia, sort of tall, sort of homely looking guy, what does he bring to the table besides being an Air Force and Navy veteran? Well, I bring a lot of different experiences, which I think will help all of us. One, I've been a pastor. Somebody once asked me, how did you get into politics after being a pastor? I said, have you ever sat through a Baptist deacons meeting? I said, enough said. You learn enough about compromise and those looks that roll their eyes and say, well, you're just the pastor, but we'll take care of you anyway, okay? I was also a lawyer. I'm also a lawyer. I've been in the military now for 23 years, both in two branches, the Air Force and the Navy. But then I also, for most of you in this room, and this next week you're going to experience this, I speak, well, for some of you, if you listen to my drawl, you think that I speak another language besides English, because my southern drawl is a little bit much. But I also speak another language, and it's called Hill, Capitol Hill. I was in the state legislature for 6 years. I was on Capitol Hill for 8 years. I understand the interactions of what goes on in that hill. I understand the politics. I understand the posturing. I understand the promises, and I understand how to get it done. And as I told many senators when I was going through confirmation, they would bring up an issue, they'd bring up something, and I would just politely look at them, and I would tell them, because many of them I worked with, I would say, well, that's great, Senator. I look forward to see how you're going to fund it. And they would look at me like, ooh, I can't get this one by this one. And they would say, well, what about a new program? I said, well, Senator, if it's in the law, guess what? We're going to follow it. So when we look at across the board, we look at what we're doing, those are the things that I bring to the table. But you also may say, what are my priorities? My priorities are pretty simple. That timely access to care and benefits is not an option. I have said this before and I'll say it again. The idea that the veteran has to call a congressman or a senator to get help with the benefits they earn means that the VA has failed. Now, if you want to preach this morning, I'm going to get on it. There's no other organization in the world that has to get outside help to get the very benefits, and hear me when I say it, earned through your service. I'm going to put the constituent services out of business on the Hill. Now, is that going to be easy? No, it's not. But did you realize, and some of you you've all had a lot of you, to be here looking at what you're doing on the Hill this week, did you realize that most offices on the Hill, almost every one of them, 60% of the constituent services, in other words, people who call in for help from the congressman or their senator, are calling about their VA health care or benefits. 60%. Think about what they could be doing if they were not answering calls that the VA should have already solved. I'm not rose-colored glasses, and I will never tell you that hopefully in my term of 4 years that we'll solve this problem. But I'll guarantee you this, my hope is that by the time we get out of here and we leave, that number's closer, a lot closer to zero. When we understand what we're there for, then we can understand the challenges that lie ahead. And lately, there's been a lot of things going on. Some of you, if you do not do social media or you do not do the other things out there, I would encourage you to get on it with the VA websites, my Twitter page, Instagram page, because I'm going to bring the message straight to you. And I'm going to bring this message straight to the Hill. And there's been a lot of things going on, so why don't we just clear up some issues that are going on right now that I want to make sure that you understand. The first is this. In my 2.5 weeks, we have made a promise, and we're keeping it, that through changes, whether it be through employees and employee counts, and yes, we've had layoffs. Yes, there may be others. We've had savings found. Like, did you realize that the VA was paying $178,000 for a newsletter that they could instantly get pretty much for free? We canceled that, by the way. That money's being redirected. We did go into it, and I want to understand, as me being a chaplain and also me being the Secretary of VA, I don't care what background you're from, I don't care what persuasion you may take, what ideas you think, where you may look, what you may call God. When you come as a veteran to earn benefits in the VA, we're not separating you anymore. At the VA, we will fly the American flag and the POW flag. We will not separate you out. But hear me clearly, no one will discriminate against anyone coming in to get the veteran services they have earned. But this is it. We're back to working. We took $14 million, again, back to Unity, out of our programs that were frankly not giving the veteran what they needed, and we took the $14 million out of the DEI program and we put that back to veterans care. That's where it's supposed to be. Contracts, go ahead. Contracts that are going on right now. Get ready. You will be surprised at the contracts that we are finding that have no direct impact to veterans care, but are being spent. And we're going to make sure that that money, by the way, is redirected back where? To the veterans. I think they're getting the picture. When we understand this, this is what we need to be focused on. Because when our money is given to us, by the way, from you, have y'all thought about this before? It's your money. I happen to be one of those members of Congress that always remembered that, one, my office was not paid for by me. I was simply occupying it for the 9th District of Georgia. And also, just like you, it comes out of my pocket. When Washington says we're going to pay for something, they help pay for it out of your pocket. Shouldn't we be very judicious in how we spend it? And shouldn't we follow the law? You know, that's a simple concept. I'm going to tell you right now, the VA is going to make sure that we are focused on giving the best care we possibly can and following the law. Many of you have come to me, either through your organizations or through your representatives, and talked about difficulties that you've had with getting service at the VA, getting your access, whether you want it in a VA facility or you want it in community care. I'm here to tell you right now, the days of making choices limited for veterans on where they can get their care according to the law, according to the Mission Act, are over. We are not going to stand in the way. We're going to facilitate with proper oversight, proper governance, and the highest quality standards that you get your care as the law prescribes, so that you are no longer, again, as we said, calling up somebody to get what you've already earned. And we're not going to settle for anything less. Homelessness and suicide. Two of the heartbeat issues for me. It is amazing to me that over 30,000 of our brothers and sisters this day not only are homeless, many more in a food scarcity situation. This shouldn't be. Suicide, 17 a day. Over 40%, however, did you know this statistic? Out of those 17, 40% have never had any contact with the VA. 40%. If we were just able to reach that group, that number, and again, which is way too high, could be 8 or 9 a day, which, by the way, is way too high. But if we just have that out, so I need your help here. You've got friends, you've got veterans, even non-veterans. Believe me, a veteran's life is precious to me, but so is a non-veteran's life. And we're all everybody's wingman. We're all everybody's battle buddy. We've got to make sure that we're asking the questions. If you've got friends who are struggling and you've got friends who are needful, we need that personal touch, because I'm going to tell you something. We have spent billions of dollars and added countless programs to the homeless situation and to the suicide prevention and seen nothing. I'm ready to see results. I don't know about you. I'm ready to take whatever we have and say, what can we do better to make sure that every veteran does not get to a point in their life where they feel like they cannot go on. This is something that can't happen. So as we look at this together, what does it take? It takes leadership. It takes leadership in what we're going to be doing. And there's going to be times that we disagree. And there's going to be times when we don't. And this is supposed to come off, and I hope it does. If this goes nuts, I'll cut it off and you'll just be able to hear me. Oh, great. I love y'all up here, but their faces look so good this morning. Leadership is about accountability. Leadership is about raising the bar. I am not a secretary of VA that is going to sit behind a desk. In fact, as you can probably already tell, this old Baptist preacher is about time to get out from behind the podium. I've already walked around the VA facility in D.C. and walked into offices. I don't think that they've ever seen the secretary, because when they look up, like, who are you? And I reach out and say, hey, I'm Doug.
Hi, I'm Rick.
Hey, Rick, it's good to see you. This is what it's about. Leadership is about, I'm going to hold myself accountable at the highest level I can. By the way, I have a real easy accountability partner. She's 5'2", blonde-headed. I've been married to her for 36 years. I'm scared of no man and one woman, and she's it, okay? When we understand this, it's about holding accountable. There's a plaque that sits on my desk, and it's from, I am from Georgia. How many SEC in the house? We got an SEC in the house? There we go. Big Ten, God bless you. Okay, no. Kidding, okay? I'm kidding. Not really, but okay. All right. Do I have any Go Dogs? Oh, we got a Go Dog. At least one. There's always one crazy in the bunch. We're here. Go Dogs. But it's a plaque that sits on my desk, and it's one of my driving principles. I'm going to share two of them with you here toward the end. The first one, it says this, and I've told this to all the VA employees, and I'm telling it to you. So I'm a big believer, if you want to be held accountable, you tell people about it so then they can help hold you accountable as well. So here's the deal. When everything goes wrong at the VA, it's my fault. It's my fault. You don't have to go anywhere. You're not going to find an undersecretary. You're not going to find an assistant secretary. You're not going to find an under assistant to oh, give me a break. You're going to find me. And I'm going to come to you and say, look, we messed this up. And we're going to correct it the best way we can. Number two, If it's sort of good, you know those days when it's sort of good? Well, then it's all of us. But on those days when they get it right, it's them. It's them. I've gotten to the place in my life that I want to see people succeed. God's blessed me more than I could ever imagine to be where I'm at. I think every day when I get into the office, somebody's going to come and say, no, you're not supposed to be here anymore. I'm a trooper's kid from Gainesville. I went to the White House last night, and I'm sitting here saying, really? Lisa and I, she lived on a little farm. I grew up with my dad. We're like, this is still good. Because once you get accustomed to Washington, you forget where you come from. Hear me clearly. I love Washington, but inside the DMV, there's only so many people, and most of them are elected, or most of them have business with Washington. But when you get outside of the Beltway, you know what? It's where most of us are from. And they get common sense. As my grandmama used to say, common sense ain't common. That's pretty true. So we're going to try and just bring a little dose of common sense. And we're going to say what matters and how do we fix it. And I'm going to put things in different perspectives. I'm going to look at it in new lenses. I'm going to ask questions. Sometimes I'm asking questions not because I'm looking to change something. I'm asking questions because how can we make it better? Because if you don't ask questions, you don't get better. And I am sick of Washington, D.C., and also spending money. And even in the VA, I'm not going to allow this anymore because I heard it enough as a Baptist preacher in a deacon's meeting. Well, we just don't do that. We just have never done it that way before, Mr. Secretary. Guess what? You are now. It's time to get out a new little pencil. It's time to get out a new pad because whether it's my VSOs working together with me, whether it's our workers inside the VA, it's now time we all stand for one principle. And I said it when I started. I'm going to say it again before I finish. The veteran is now first at the VA. I'm a big movie buff. I love to watch movies. And if you want to get into Rocky, Adrian, I can do Rocky, I can do that. And for those of you who already thought I was Forrest Gump, well, Jenny said I could come today, so I was okay. But there's one movie that really impacts me, and it sits on I've taped it to my computer screen, so that whenever I see it, it's right below my computer screen. And it come from the movie. Remember the Apollo 30 when we couldn't get our astronauts back? And Gene Kranz made this statement. Most of you know what it is. He said, failure is not an option. Failure is not an option. For many of you in here, and you know others, I have a daughter. I have 3 kids. By the way, also, we got it. There's some changes coming in our life, but there's our oldest child, and you may have seen her at our confirmation hearing. Jordan is 32 years old and has spina bifida. Jordan's in a wheelchair. She's never walked a day in her life. The first day she got in her new wheelchair, she rolled. We cried like it was her first steps. Many of you in this room have had to experience similar issues. I understand that 12 inches to a wheelchair might as well be Mount Everest. I understand that doors that don't function to ours with disabilities, especially physical impairment, is a blocked door. But what I did learn from Jordan, and I learned from many of you, she has an attitude. Now, I like to see the sweet, gentle Jordan who loves everybody, and if she was in here, she would talk to every one of you. And I'm going to try and get her to one of these events sometime. She works at a hospital every day. She gets up, dresses herself, she gets on a little bus, and she goes to work. But also Jordan has taught me something else besides loving everybody and being open to everybody. We found this out. And as parents in this room, I hope you enjoy this as much as I did. We had to always go to these parent-teacher conferences with Jordan, because she was on her special plan and needs on how she would actually, get her care. And we were in the middle school one time, and she comes in, and the teachers are all sitting there, and Jordan's not in the room. And they get to the end of it and say, Jordan's this great kid and everything. I said, well, thank you. Thank God she's got a mama. We're good. And they said, but we need your help on something. And I said, what? I said, okay, what do you need? And she said, well, when the halls get crowded and Jordan can't get, and there's people standing in front of her locker, she said, she has this tendency just to push her wheelchair and hit people in the calves. Okay, now I'm gonna have to tell you, I'm sitting there, I'm telling you, I'm sitting there, and Lisa was an educator for 31 years, teacher, so she knew all these teachers. She's sitting there like, oh, okay, well, I'm sitting there like, yes, yes, hit him again, hit him again, hit him again. She wasn't being mean, she was just making a point. 12th Secretary of VA has got up on this Sunday morning to come tell you there's going to be a lot of people having their shins nicked a little bit. Because we're going to be pushing. We may disagree, but trust me, there's two things going to happen in all the changes we're going to have. Benefits, health care, not compromised. Period. And the veteran is back first at the VA. Will you help me start pushing a little bit? We may have a few skint knees, but we're going to get something done because I'm not going to accept